So then I think that brings up the moral dilemma. In fact, when this first happened, I know in our podcast, I think we were predicting what would happen.
We sure did.
And that is...
happened a little faster than we thought it would, though.
But we knew the direction of things, and this is what I mean. Okay, on October 7th, I think the sentiment of the world was in support of Israel. I mean, 95% of the sentiment of the world was in support of Israel.
The world was saying you have the right to defend yourself, and we support you in the duty to do this, and we are behind you.
But what we predicted is that Hamas would embed themselves in the innocent population, because frankly, there is a very large Arab innocent population.
Yeah,
I think that's important.
Today they just crossed 11,000.
And it should break all of our hearts.
And it does.
To consider that the vast majority are innocents. They're not
Yeah, they're saying
fighters.
Upwards of over 3,000 children, 4,000 women. It does break your heart because these are the casualties of war. And these are the innocents who are now, because they're under the authority of Hamas, are suffering the consequences.
That's the moral dilemma.
And that is the moral dilemma.
The moral dilemma is Israel knows that they have to take out Hamas. They have to take out Hamas. If they don't, they will just continue a wave after wave. And every time that Hamas has done this, it's gotten worse and more severe and grander in scale every time. And so the next time, of course, it will even be more so. And so they've come to see now they have to take out Hamas. Hamas has embedded themselves, literally, in fact, now Israel has surrounded Gaza City. They're attacking in the very streets of Gaza, and they have a hospital surrounded now, where underneath it is a whole complex of Hamas military compound, so-called military. And underneath a hospital, knowing that, and really, in many ways, inviting Israel to attack it. Because, and this is what we predicted, that the great sentiment of the world was supporting Israel. Israel would then have to attack, and then as they did so, it would be inevitable that because Hamas is embedding themselves and using the population as shields, that there would be loss of civilian life, and that would then backwash onto Israel, and that the support of the world would be eroded. And now we are seeing that the pressure is immense, but that was the whole point.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And how terrible to even contemplate that. It helps us see that we're playing by a different set of rules here. I mean, from our perspective, and I believe it would be also true in Israel, that we value life in a different way. Their valuing of life is a means to an end, which is the ultimate goal, to remove Israel and all the Jews from the face of the earth. Because please believe me when I say, even if Israel, God forbid, and it'll never happen, because God is sovereign over all of that, right?
Amen.
He's not done with Israel yet.
Sure.
But if that were to happen, do you think Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran would stop if the Jews were scattered to the four winds of the earth? No, they would continue to pursue until the last Jew was gone. And by the way, that's also a demonic-rooted ploy of the enemy, because Satan doesn't want there to be a kingdom when Jesus Christ comes back again. And he wants to make God a liar by destroying the Jews. He couldn't prevent the first coming of Christ, but he does want to make a mess of the return of Jesus Christ.
Right. Now, we've heard, I think, that this perspective, and that is that if Hamas was to lay down their arms, what would be the result? There would be peace.
Absolutely.
If they would lay down their arms, there would be peace.
If Hamas said today, here are all the hostages, and we, no pretending this time, no facade, no fake move, we are going to be at peace, and we will sign whatever we need to sign for there to be a two-state solution so that our people can thrive and Israel may thrive as well. What would happen?
This is completely hypothetical because it will not happen.
Well, that's been shown over time because when given the opportunity, repeatedly, the Palestinians have refused that type of arrangement.
That reminds me, I think we do want to draw a distinction also between Hamas and Palestinian Arabs in general. Hamas does not represent the vast majority of Palestinian Arabs.
Though they've been voted into office in the Gaza, obviously, so they have that authority there.
2006 or something, and there's never been another election.
But don't you think those elections are nice and clean and
legitimate? Yeah.
Yeah, legitimate.
But here's my point. Here's my point. If Hamas, hypothetically speaking, if Hamas was to lay down their weapons, there would be peace. What would happen if Israel was to lay down their weapons?
Well, let's put it this way in this solution. Just maybe you saw it in the news the other day, where some of the Hamas leadership soldiers were surrounded by the IDF. And so what did they do? They sent out about 100 Palestinian children in the line of IDF fire. Now, what did the Israeli soldiers do to those children? Let them come safely, right? While Hamas leadership went free. Turn the tables for a moment. If Israel's leaders were caught by Hamas and they sent out 100 Israeli children, what do you think Hamas would do to those children?
Well, we already know because of what they did to Jewish children when they invaded Israel on October 7th.
But this kind of unfolds and unpackages what we're talking about in terms of this moral dilemma. We're not playing by the same set of rules.
Right. But it brings us back again because the moral dilemma is why so many people, nations, organizations, students in our own country, which I would like to talk about this evening as well. The wave, the tidal wave that's coming against Israel now, because they have been drawn into this moral dilemma. And I propose that Hamas knew that would be the result. That was the very purpose, was to draw Israel into moral dilemma. They were deliberately hiding amongst and establishing their compounds right next to playgrounds, schools, UN schools, in the knowledge of the UN, by the way, and hospitals, in knowing and that Hamas would have to take them out and thereby bring innocent lives lost.
And that's a pattern you see within all of this terrorism in the Middle East.
But greater with Hamas.
But greater with Hamas.
Right.
Though prior to 9/11, Hezbollah was your number one perpetrator.
True.
So you have the terror attack, then you have a response by Israel. And then there's a public outcry against Israel and their response. And ultimately, Hamas, the one who instigated the whole thing, they end up being rewarded. So their agenda is furthered as a result of that terrorist attack, even though the innocents under their charge have been slaughtered.
Because if Israel stops, let's say, and does not take out Hamas, then they would simply rebuild, and they would be given billions of dollars from the nations of the world to rebuild, so-called, the Gaza Strip. But
Which is happening right now. It's been promised.
It's already been promised to them.
I mean, Joe Biden goes to Israel, and as he's leaving, he promises millions of dollars to those in Gaza. Even though he knew that it wasn't likely going to go to the Palestinians, it might be taken up by Hamas. And of course it did. It's been shown that they're actually hoarding, hundreds of thousands of gallons of fuel and other types of resources that could be going to those who are suffering. Instead, they're using it for themselves.